I'd like to talk about the research paper and writing as a process. And the research paper, boy, that's a big, huge project. And to think that we could start from zero and end with a completed paper that has a works cited page and over 10 sources, 3 of which are books, and over 2,500 words, to think that we could write that from beginning to end is a big fantasy. And so to try to get at that as a process, I'd like for us to think about pieces and parts. And so we might start that by asking questions. Those might appear as tweets or Instagrams. Those might lead into keywords, which again might be tweeted or Instagrammed. Those keywords will be used in the academic library search engine to find articles and books. And in that process, you'll be crafting a bibliography. So already you've seen several parts: questions, topics and keywords, and bibliography. And that's just the beginning. The next step after that bibliography is to take those sources in the bibliographic record, to move them into another file, and to start an annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography is a bibliography plus an annotation. An annotation is kind of a fancy word for notes. I think of the annotated bibliography as having 3 sections for each entry. So there's the bibliographic record, and then there are the 3 parts. The first part is the argument, or the main idea that the author of your text, be it an article or a book, that's the first part of the annotated bibliography entry. The second part, this is the really important space because it'll move us into the next part of the next project. That's the quotes. What are the passages of importance that you pull from that source? And ideally, can you start to interpret those a little bit? Write about what they mean, how they work, and what they do. That's the analysis. The third part is a part that may not end up in any other projects or even the research paper as a whole, but it's a part that really works in the project and really works for you. And that's the part where you write a little bit about why this matters to me. Why do I care about this topic? Why do I care about this source? And it connects you to that in ways that are really important. Remember that this is for you, so it's writing to yourself. It's a bit reflective, and it should be and probably is intimate. It's not something that you're necessarily going to share with other people. But it's important to be honest in that space and also to make that connection. So that's a little bit about the annotated bibliography, which is just one of the parts. The next part from that is the quotation outline. And the quotation outline, as you can imagine, comes from those quotes that I talked about a little bit back in that annotated bibliography. So remember, you've moved from a bibliography to an annotated bibliography, now to a quotation outline. The quotation outline, you can pull, and you can go back to that annotated bibliography and pull out really the second part, which is the quotes and the analysis. And I would highly encourage you revise that analysis a little bit more, because you're thinking about it and you're putting it into a slightly different context. It's a new document, mind you, either a Word document or maybe you're using Google Drive. I think the next part of the process is the part where you're starting to think about organization and coherence and maybe even rhetoric and persuasion. And this is a space where you're going to move those quotation outlines, which are the beginning of body paragraphs, into different order. And you might order them or organize them conceptually according to middle in terms of strength or weakness, the weakest in the middle, and the strongest last. And that's a way to organize the body in some way. Now, it's just one idea as a way to organize it, and it's not necessarily the most organic or the most effective, but it's one possibility. From that quotation outline, you can use those quotes in the analysis to begin a rough draft, which is to organize them in some rhetorical order as opposed to none. And then also maybe to hash out a rough introduction and rough conclusion. A rough draft might be some engagement with a peer and peer review, and a more effective rough claim in that introduction body paragraphs. And then before your final draft, of course, you want to organize entirely statements of transition, make clear every point sentence with body paragraphs, maybe add a concession or a counter argument. Those usually go after the introduction or before the conclusion. And certainly always sentence level editing. In this way, I think we've gone through parts, quite a few, to make a whole, that research paper. And I think in this way you'll find it far more effective and you'll be far more successful. Remember, some say that the items that we wrestle with at the undergraduate level are items we wrestle with for life. I look forward to your projects. Thanks for listening. Muhammad.